Take me home, I wanna know if you're down, ready to go. Wanna fly away with you, float away, fly away.
Dude, I saw your video of fucking
Oh,
the piano playing.
yeah, you like that?
That was cool. That was really cool. Where did you find that piano?
That was a Frio market.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, they just had one sitting out.
Yeah, so they just had one that sits there.
Is that always there?
Oh, I haven't been to Frio markets in years. Last time I was there, I wasn't there.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Nice. And who were you with?
I was with Juliet, who you don't know, is a very good friend of mine from Melbourne, and her partner.
Oh, right. And you were just showing them the ropes of Perth City.
Mucking around. Yeah. Yeah. So we went to Frio. We went to. We went to Little Creatures, and the food at Little Creatures has gotten good.
In what way?
It's unreal, like very good. So we had they did like a really nice pork belly.
Oy,
They
I
did
love
like
pork belly.
Yeah, they do like really nice chili mussels. Like it was unreal, it was absolutely killer. Yeah,
Nice. Fuck. Yeah, I've got to go down there and check it out then.
yeah, it's just that, man. It's fucking. So we'll do it. We'll do a day. We'll do a day. We'll go down.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Make a day of it.
You've still got a bit of that Canadian in you. We'll do it, eh?
Don't you know? Eh?
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? I could talk like this the whole time if you like. Sorry, eh?
Yeah, dude. So fucking what's been happening in the world of philosophy and finance?
Not much, man. Actually, no, a lot. So
Okay.
something extremely exciting happened in the last couple of days. So you know how I was building market maker models, algorithmic trading models?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the platform that I build that on is called Quant Connect. And
Shout out Quant Connect.
shout out Quant Connect. I love these guys. These guys are unreal. So first of all, I am very in line with their mission and their values.
What's the mission statement?
Right. So their whole mission is about democratizing quant finance. So what that essentially means is, having the ability to build these algorithmic trading models. They want to make that accessible to everybody, right? To as many people as possible. And they want to do it in a way that's meritocratic, which is where, based on your ability to develop a good model, is how you're rewarded, right? Because as we know, financial services is no different than any other industry, and reward is often based upon networks and connections, which is fair. That's how it is. Yeah. But their approach is, so one of the things they have is they have what's called an alpha marketplace, right? And so alpha is a concept in finance that just means you return above the benchmark. So
What's it called again, sorry?
Alpha.
Alpha, right.
So if the stock market returns 8%, that's your benchmark, and you return 10%, your alpha is 2%. So you outperform the benchmark by 2%.
Okay, right.
Right? And
how does that benefit you? Do you get like a residual extra payment or?
Right. So what happens is in the alpha marketplace, let's say I build an algorithm and the algorithm performs very well.
Right.
It's sound, the back tests are good, the financial theory is good, it performs well on live trading. So you trade it for a couple of months, everything looks schmick, looks kosher. You can list it on what's called the Alpha Marketplace, and it's pretty much a portal inside of Quant Connect. It's a marketplace where with managed institutions, financial institutions, managed funds, institutional level investors. So these are like your JP Morgans, your
The big boys.
Yeah, the big boys. They can come in and they can say, we want to allocate part of our funds towards this strategy. And then you obviously get a commission on that. So whatever I think it works as, I haven't looked at the commission structure exactly, but I think it works as like very similar to a managed fund, where you have that management fee, which is your X% for dollars invested, and then probably like a performance fee as well. But I'm not sure on that. I'm not 100% on that. It's fee structure. So the idea is, like, as an institution, you can handpick out the strategies that are going to suit you and your current asset allocation. And from a quant developer's point of view, all I have to do is code up this algorithm, and I can potentially quite nicely profit on it, and especially if it performs well. And the thing that I really like here about what Quant Connect and what they do, so that's part of it. But the other part that I really like is, in the world of quant development.
You're saying quant?
Quant, yeah. So quant is short for quantitative finance.
Okay, right.
And so quantitative finance is, originally it's like the practice of mathematical model and a data-focused approach to investing.
Okay.
And now it represents an industry that's a lot more based in algorithmic trading, high-frequency trading, like machine learning and AI is a big space in quant finance. So data science, pretty much. And that's part of why I do data science degree, right? But so coming back to it, so if I was to build an algorithmic trading model from scratch, the amount of work that I have to do is insane. I have to get data I have to pay for that data. It can be very expensive. Some cases you're paying up to 25,000 USD, right, for data.
And what does this data consist of?
Equities, price data.
Oh, it's just whatever's going on in the market share at that time.
Yeah, and you can get free data sources. Don't get
Okay.
me wrong, but
Are they quality though?
well, first of all, the data needs to be cleaned. So not all data is born equal, right?
Is that because of like bots and all like, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things, like a lot of sketchy people in the finance industry that could be like pushing numbers that aren't concurrent with the actual data set that's actually out there.
It's not so much an issue in the data. So data issues you get sometimes can just be system errors, the way the data is collected. There's an anomaly, something went wrong. Somebody's manually intervened with the collection of data. So if any form of data is collected by human, there's human error that's introduced.
Right.
So like if you imagine if you're counting cars on a road and you're counting the colors, you might tick the wrong box. All of a sudden you have a data error.
Okay, so it's not like enforced error like what with the with what the pharmaceutical companies do.
No. Yeah, so it's not like falsifying data or anything.
Oh, okay, right.
I love how as soon as you say pharmaceuticals, we're on the same page.
Yeah, you know exactly what's going on.
So they do all of this work. They build the tool that you can host your application on. They handle the processing. They handle the connection with the brokers. They handle... so if I want to code something that places a buy order on Bitfinex, right? Very, very simple. I have a Bitfinex broker and I have my computer. There's a lot of steps that I need to go through, and I have to do like this thing called like an API call to send to this broker. But there's a specific way that this has to be structured, and if I screw it up, like you can get errors, and different brokers will handle it differently. So what these guys have done is they've gone to like all of the brokers, and they've built like these modules, right? So they've pre-done all of the code. That means if I want to place a trade on Bitfinex for a cryptocurrency, or if I want to place a trade on the Australian Stock Exchange through Interactive Brokers, right, it's a completely different asset. The thing that I type in my code is the exact same. And they've gone through and just made it all standardized. And as a developer, it means that, like, look at me, like I wouldn't say I'm a very experienced developer, right? I've only been developing and programming for maybe
Couple years?
Yeah, 3-4 years.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm able to...
I'm acting like I know how long you've been fucking doing this for. So.
Oh, yeah, about right, 3-4 years. But it's like I would need so much more skill and ability, and I would have to understand. I'd have to be able to host my own like server. I'd have to understand like how to, like, I'm really bad at infrastructure, and I'm not a DevOps guy, so I'd have to know like how to set up my own server, and then I'd have to pay to host my server, and then I'd have to set up like redundancies in case things go wrong. And like there's security considerations that I'm not a security guy by any means. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so there's all these.
Is there value into going into the security thing?
I think so. So this is a really interesting space, and we'll come back to this in just a second.
Yeah.
So the reason why I was talking about Quant Connect is they recently have done a funding round. So members of the community, it's still open at the moment. They're funding 1.5 million. It's through a group called WeFunder, and essentially it gives you the opportunity to buy shares in Quant Connect despite it not being listed on the market. So it's like a pre-IPO purchase of shares. It's a private company.
Interesting.
Yeah. So me totally agreeing with their mission statement and just kind of seeing the future of where I think the industry is going to go. I was extremely excited by this. Like, they're dominating everybody in the space at the moment. Their product is unreal. Like, as a user, I would have to try to find something to complain about. Like, I'd really be pushing. The guys are great. The guy that runs it, Jared, I think he's actually a Kiwi fella. Jared Broad, unreal guy. So just everything about the company just ticks boxes for me. Does that mean it's going to be successful? Not necessarily, but you know, it's really cool.
There's a lot of minutia there that you need to take into consideration for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So I was really excited about all of that, and being able to put some capital into it and being able to invest in something that I really believe in. So that was massive thing for me.
Have you gone balls to the walls?
No. You're limited on how much you can invest.
Right.
There's US regulations because it's a US-based company. There's the funding group is US-based. I'm actually not even sure if Quant Connect is. I think they're registered here. But
Australian?
Yeah, I think so.
Shout out Australia.
Shout out Australia. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, possible shout out Australia.
Oceania represent. Yeah. So no, I'm smart about how I've allocated the capital. I would probably like to allocate a little bit more, but I'm pretty illiquid at the moment because I've previously moved a lot of stuff into different investments that I don't want to pull back out. Right. And so
That you're just going to sit on.
yeah, that I'm just going to sit on. So there's that, and the fact that there are regulations around it. You can only invest so much based on your assets and income, and so it's like, okay, you're fairly restricted. But I put in a comfortable enough package size that I think it's pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah, and I get some perks with it being an end user too. So I was like, nice,
Happy days.
happy days.
So what does that mean for you? Right? So this new jump ahead, is this going to alter what you've been working on so far?
No.
Do they allow you to use your current build of algorithm on their platform?
Oh, so it can already do all of that, right? That's their
Okay.
product, right? So I have a subscription with them as well, and that's what the subscription does. It lets you do all of this stuff. So I literally can go into a little, it's called an IDE, but imagine it's like a little notepad document.
Yeah,
little
like a
notepad.
Word document kind
Like
of
a
thing.
Word document,
Yeah.
but it does all this fancy thing and
Is that
highlights
the
colors.
Is that the code box?
Yeah, the code box, right?
The code box.
And I can type in, if I know what commands to do, and they've got documents for the commands, if I know what commands to write, I can build an algorithmic trading model very, very easily. And then when I want to connect out the broker, I press a couple of buttons, put in a key from my broker, which you can generate with a couple of button presses, and you deploy a full-scale algorithmic trading model. In fact, they even have pre-built template models. You could deploy an algorithmic trading model with an understanding of how it works. If I was to use one of their framework models, and I'm not wildly experienced, you probably set one up in 30 minutes and have it trading live.
Jesus.
Yeah, like that's what I mean. The amount of work they've put into this is unreal.
How many people are currently operating on their platform?
I don't know. You'd have to.
Do they have numbers?
Yes, they do.
Okay,
So
right.
when they released
That kind of transparency is very it's needed in a company to disclose that kind of information because you don't know what they've been through or the people that they're dealing with, like in multitude.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. So you want to get an idea of their client base, and there's some institutions on there as well. Like there's quantitative institutions that will use it for their back end, and I've even thought about it too. Like if I was to start up a quantitative fund, I would use them because why am I going to go through unless I'm doing like high frequency trading, and I need like complete control over like everything and over this like the latency and the speed of my execution, and I need everything in my wheelhouse. And theirs is probably plenty efficient for that anyway. But I would use them. Like there's no drawback.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If they're a stable institution as well.
they're a stable company. They're doing quite well. They ran net loss last year, but it was smaller than the year before. So it looks like their margins are improving.
No, that's good.
Yeah. But I think as a whole, this is the industry is in my mind. I think the quant industry is set to blow up over the next 40 years. There's not even a question about it. It already has been. The financial landscape that we're in now, when it comes to investing, will be completely different to what it is. It will be so insanely different. So you mentioned something I think a little bit earlier.
Securities?
You talk about. You were asking about security before that. We were talking about like the changing of landscape. I think you said it was more in the context of data.
Yeah.
Like how these algos are affecting data and things like that. It's not even that they affect data; it's that they affect the market. So have you heard of a flash crash?
No.
So flash crash is where
Is it like what it sounds like?
it's literally the price of the market crashes and it'll drop. It might drop like 60%.
Damn.
Yeah,
That's
inside of a
bear
couple of
market.
minutes and then come back up.
It goes bear market in a flash. Okay, I get you. Yeah.
And it just goes bang, bang.
Right. And what's that more related to? Is that cryptocurrency?
Happens in stocks.
Does it actually?
There's been multiple flash crashes on, I think, our market as well.
And what's
definitely on the US
causing
market.
that?
Algos, man.
So algorithmic trading, say if someone like dumps all their stock, it's going to crash. And then everyone else is like, buy.
So imagine you have...
Oh, so it's an algorithm that's doing it. So it's going to be instantaneous, right?
Well, it's that the algorithm, it's that the algos are hit by a domino effect. So what happens is, first of all, it's not like you have billions of algos. It's that you have thousands of algos managing billions of dollars. And so what happens is Somebody sells something, whatever. Or there's a mistake in the code of one of the algos. Whatever causes it, who knows. And then all of a sudden, there's a dip. And a couple of the algos have this quantitative thing where this level, and you can leave it like a stop loss, or these different ways where they work out the direction that the market's heading, and they might look at that and go, oh, the market's crashing. So they just go and dump their position. And then that causes that run down to extend. And then other algos will see that, and depending on how they're coded up, will dump their position. And so what happens is you essentially just get this rundown on price because all of these algos are just going XYZ is under Y%, dump the position. Now, a retail trader wouldn't necessarily dump a position like that. Like they might have a stop loss, but if you're in an institution, there's no fundamental news that has come out. There's no reason why this should be happening, and all of a sudden the market just dips. First of all, it's going to take you time to react.
Unless the algorithms are all working together and they've developed consciousness.
So that's a rabbit hole to go down because there's like consciousness.
No, but that's one of the questions that I had. Do you think that, or is there a chance that these algorithms can work in unison together and almost like level out so that doesn't happen? Can they respond to each other?
Well, they do respond to each other
because of the
movements in the price. But no, because what's the goal of a trading algorithm?
To win.
Right. Stock market is a zero-sum game. Why would you work in unison?
I understand what you're saying. My question is, if it's on one platform, right, and if everyone wins on that platform, then isn't their price going to go up as well?
But see, that's what a managed fund is. That's what a hedge fund is. The hedge fund is just their system for investing, and all they do is pull more capital into it. And then if you want to win with that strategy, you put money in the hedge fund. Mm-hmm. And then somebody else will go, I don't want to just invest. I want to be the head honcho that gets to charge all these fees, so I want to come up with a better strategy. And I want to try and beat them. And then if I do, I go, hey, boys and girls, come and give me some money and we can,
So it's beneficial to the individual that your algorithm is almost like running in a different way to everybody else's.
Yeah, so this is diversification of strategies. And this is why I think quant is the future, right? I firmly believe that we're going to get to a stage where people are investing no longer in stocks, but people are investing, or at least the ones that are really into this space and the ones that, a lot of the big money isn't investing in stocks anymore, that they're investing in algos.
Hey, okay. That's where I thought you were going with that.
And so you might have different algos that work well. Like this one might work really well in a bear market. This one might work well in a bull market. This one might be more defensive. So, and then what I reckon you'll see is you'll have algos that manage your asset allocation between the algos. So you might have a bot that reads the sentiment off of Twitter and does sentiment analysis and goes, everybody's pretty negative about the market today. Or we've had 30 days of consistent negative sentiment, so we think that we're about to enter a bear market, so the algorithm's going to pull some funds out of this algo and move it into this algo, right? Because what are you doing? You're quantifying and you're automating. That's really all you're doing, is you're finding a way to get a computer to do it, because then you can watch more assets and you can react faster and you can remove the emotional side of the coin. And the other thing you're trying to do is you can watch like across the board. So a human trader can only watch like 4 screens at a time at best, I reckon. But
an algorithm doesn't need to watch, right? It just needs to monitor.
Yeah, simultaneously an algorithm. There's algos out there that'll be monitoring thousands of assets at any given point in time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's and so this is what I reckon the future is going to be. And this is why, for me, investing in something like Quant Connect, I think, is so key. Because it's like, think about retail trading, right? Think about like options trading, right? Once upon a time, people didn't really trade in options. Joe Schmo, if he wanted
Explain options?
So options is like, I'm really terrible at explaining this, but it's like a contract to buy or sell something at a later price and it expires. So the best way I can put it is it's like, so there's something called binary options, which is a great example of a very high-risk investment vehicle. And the way it works is you pretty much say, I think that the price is going to go up or down. And I think I'm confident it's going to do it within X time period. And then if you are right, you make a lot of money. And if you're wrong, you lose all of it. Right. So, but different vehicles like this. And once upon a time, this used to be these kind of vehicles were reserved for like only the more sophisticated and educated investor. I know you got guys on Wall Street's bets coming out and dropping their life savings into these random like investment vehicles, right? So when you got these guys that are looking for all these different ways to do things and these ways to, because they don't want a normal investment strategy. They don't want to go down the line of, just investing in an index fund or whatever, or they want a portion of their portfolio to be high risk. It's like, where do you think they're going to go? Do you think they're just going to go batting on options, or do you think they're going to be looking at, can I invest in this strategy? Now, what I think the other problem you're going to have is you're potentially also going to get some serious regulation issues, and we're going to see some seriously criminal activity if it's not regulated well.
What's one of the outcomes that you give an example of?
Okay, so
not to tell anybody any ideas or anything,
fine.
but
no. Well, I mean, look, realistically,
don't do this, but continue.
So fortunately in Australia, we're very licensed. So if anybody was to give you a license, they'd probably do some due diligence on this first. So it's very hard for you to start a fund unless you go to like Eastern Europe and go to like Croatia or Serbia. You can start crypto funds.
Lower Africa as well.
Lower Africa, okay. Mm-hmm. So an example is, let's just say I build a strategy and it does really well on testing, and all of a sudden, so it back tests really well, and I look at the numbers historically, and it's like, oh, this algorithm is going to make us, 1,000,000%. Woohoo! You can actually fudge that data, and when I say fudge that data, I don't mean falsified. I mean there's ways to create models that work great on the data that you test on, but suck when you deploy it in real life, and that's called overfitting. So the best way I can explain it is this. Imagine I gave you instructions, and imagine I gave you instructions to get to the front door, right? And the instructions that I gave you was walk out this door, turn to the right, walk ahead 5 paces, turn to the left, take 2 paces forward, turn to the right, walk 5 paces forward, reach out your left hand, open the door. Those instructions are extremely efficient for exiting this house. Mm-hmm. What happens as soon as I put you in another house? They're worthless. However, if I gave you instructions like, place your hand on the left wall, continue to walk procedurally, opening every door along the way until you get to the front door, at which case open the door. It's a very inefficient way of solving it, and so it doesn't look as good when you're doing it in this house, if this house is our testing space, but I can put you in any house and it'll work, right? Mm. And so overfitting, this is idea of our training data, this house that we're training in, we can build out our little strategy to work great for this house, and then I can give you a report that says, look, I can do this in 5 seconds. Right? You can exit this house in 5 seconds, and I can look at the other one and say, the one where you touch your hand and walk around the wall, it takes you like a minute to get out of the house. But if I put you in a different house, which one's going to work?
Yeah, the dragging one, of course.
Right. And so that's the issue you get, is people can fudge numbers like that. You can overfit your data really great for this scenario, but your model's useless. It's worthless. And that's a big problem.
It's kind of interesting, like the amount of different ways that you can get something done in this one industry, right? And that it's moving towards automation more and more. Mm-hmm. And it's not like this automation is going to take jobs. It's going to be, this automation is better than this automation, so we should use that instead. It's like saying, hey, this is my worker. Mm-hmm. He works better than this guy that you've already got working for you. Let's give him a run. Yeah. Where does it come to the point where that you're, how do you, like, are you selling this to certain companies as well? Like no?
Whatever. You can sell it as intellectual property. You can license it. You can start your own fund and get, whatever your licensing you need to, depending on where you live. And then, pitch it towards investors. You can package it as an exchange traded fund, which is like, those Vanguard ones where you just want to buy the whole market, so you buy into that.
Index.
Yeah, like an index. You can do the same thing with funds, just an exchange-traded fund. It's just a different vehicle. There's so many different ways you can monetize your algorithm, right? And so it's just up to like what kind of, what do you want to be doing? If all I want to do is just code shit and I don't want to have to worry about anything else, and I just want to code it, build it, and move on to the next one, then maybe selling my intellectual property is not a bad idea. Especially when you consider that sometimes an idea is good, idea might not be good in 2 years' time because everybody else is doing it.
Right, yeah.
So maybe I want to build something that works now. I'll just sell it to a company that's already got, $1 billion under management, so they can deploy it instantaneously and they can benefit from it in the now. Because it'll take me too long to start a fund and try and get investors and then I can just buy it, make it, sell it, build another model.
So it's kind of lucky that you're doing your university. Is it bachelor's?
Yeah, so I'm doing a bachelor's in data science.
Data science, and it's valuable in fucking like to the population like that we're coming up to in society. Everything's going to be computerized, like everything.
Yeah.
Most conversations that you see these days are on podcasts and stuff, especially if you like the person that you're listening to. And it's just really kind of cool that you fell into this along the same time period that you're like, actually, I want to do this for a living. So with your university studies, are they showing you like the most like current strategies or are they allowing you to go and find that and process that yourself?
So two things. Firstly, when it came to doing my data science degree, I actually picked it because I wanted to do quantitative finance. So I already knew what I wanted to do well before I stepped into the degree.
Okay,
which is
my bad.
why I selected it. The problem with the data science degree is it's not a quant finance degree. Don't get me wrong. It's brilliant. It's amazing. It's fascinating. I love what I'm learning, and I'm in no way unhappy that I've picked it. But there's very limited coverage of finance-related concepts, which, ironically enough, is actually the least important thing in quantitative finance. Yeah. If you're good at maths and programming, is way more important than if you're good at finance. Because if you're good at it's easier to teach financial concepts.
So this bachelor's that you're doing is basically just making it so that you can teach others easier?
No, the bachelor's I'm doing is so that I can go and build algorithmic trading models or work in quantitative finance or build. So there's a lot of data science is programming, software engineering, it's machine learning, it's AI, it's statistical modeling, mathematical modeling, it's data pipelines, visualizations, making pretty graphs, and getting computers to do all of this, right? So it's like a good example is, okay, I recently did a couple of things in an assignment, a couple of projects within an assignment. So I did 2 projects, and one was building a neural network, so an AI.
Okay, so you're building AI.
Yeah, so building. So the two projects that I've been doing that I did was, and very basic ones. One was building a neural network to predict future price of Bitcoin based on historical Bitcoin prices. Right, and that is all it is. Here's my price data. Let's clean it a little bit and make it nice and do some nice little data manipulation thingos to it so that it's
falsifying. You bastard.
You bastard. No, it's called removing non-stationarity, which is if
I like that word.
Yeah. So actually, when we're talking about AI, this feeds really interesting into an epiphany I had recently on psychology in people. But we'll come back to that in a second.
Okay.
So the way an AI network learns and any machine learning network learns is you feed it data. And whatever you feed it is what it learns. It can't just go, oh, you didn't give me this information, but I'm going to extrapolate. Like if it's in the data, sure. But you can't, I can't give it a year's worth of Bitcoin data and then all of a sudden it's going to be able to predict the price of Apple. Like that's a completely different thing, right? So it can only learn based on the data that we give it.
Okay.
So how this model works...
Because it's non-sentient, right? Because it can't be like, oh, because of what I've learned here, I'm going to learn some more.
It just doesn't have access to the data.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, like it's
I'm thinking way deeper.
Yeah. Look, you're thinking like if you were to have like an AI that was hooked up to the internet that could crawl the web and understand the internet and understand what it was looking for and be able to correctly pull in the right. There's a lot of like this idea that like if we release an AI into the internet, the world's over kind of deal. There's a lot of steps that need to happen before.
Yeah.
You
I
can
think
do
I might just still be a little bit higher from last night. 5:06 left some weed here and it was fucking ridiculous. Anyway.
You can't like there's a lot of steps that need to happen for that. So a very basic AI model is just like you feed it in the data and man, you can get like it's so easy to build AI models in like Python, right? Like there's people who've done the code.
What's Python?
Python's a programming language.
Okay, so like JavaScript or something.
Yeah.
Okay,
pretty much. And it's literally like you just call a package and you just do some stuff with your data, pre-process it, clean it a bit, move it around a bit, whack it in, and then it just goes, we've predicted whatever. now that's
So that's basic and basic, right?
yeah, that's like the beyond basic, right? That's like, and that's the starting point, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, it's like there's so many different variations of what you can do to your data and how you can develop and design and tweak the model to get what you want.
All right.
But yeah, so that's how the machine learning model works. So what the idea was like, it was you use that to predict future price, and the other one is like looking for trends and patterns, right, in data. So it's like if we have, like at the moment, there's different sectors that you can invest in, and if you were to mine all of this data, could you identify different sectors that are based on the numbers, right? Like, can I identify a clustering of stocks that have? Actually, this is a cool one. So this is called clustering. Ready? If I have
Hit me, Sam.
if I have a chart and it's got two different variables, and it's a scatter plot, so you've got all these little dots on it. You can see the little clusters, right? Mm-hmm. And you can see, there's a bunch of dots there, and there's a bunch of dots there. So there are two groups. There are two clusters, right?
Do you want me to agree?
Well,
I'm trying to imagine what you're.
the concept.
Yeah.
So if
I'm picturing, like, because you said mining, right?
let's move away from all that. Just pretend it's a graph.
Okay, right.
Pretend it's a chart.
Okay, right.
It's a chart, and you've got a bunch of dots here and a bunch of dots here.
Okay, yes.
And they're in these little circles with dots. Mm-hmm. You can clearly see that there's two different groups, right? That's called clustering. Now, what happens when you add a dimension? It's 3D. Mm-hmm. Then you can see them in the 3D space.
What's the third dimension if, like, say it's like time and price?
No, X, Y, and then Z. Oh, we're not talking about time at the moment.
Okay, right.
We're just talking X, Y, Z.
Okay, right.
It can be whatever. It can be speed, distance, make a vehicle.
For the algos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for anything, right? So
I'm trying. This is me trying to learn, ladies and gentlemen. Is it fucking?
So when you imagine you have like a spreadsheet, and on the spreadsheet you've got speed, distance, and the class of vehicle.
Okay, right.
Right?
Yeah.
So speed, distance traveled, class of vehicle. You can then see like, okay, speed, distance, class of vehicle. We can see all the trucks are kind of here, and they tend to do same speed, same distance. And then we can see all the cars are here, right? You can see that. So I'm going to ask you this: what happens when you add like another 30 columns to that spreadsheet? How the hell are you going to visualize that and see clusters?
It's impossible.
Well, it's not. That's what clustering is, machine learning. So the machine does it for you, and it tells you what the clusters are.
Okay, right.
And it will say, "Hey, we found these clusters," and then I can put in this new data slot, and I can say, "Hey, which group does this belong to?" Because it belongs to that group.
Oh, so like manually having to do this with like a pen and paper, you would go over every single transcript, like, data set, like a charted for every single point, and then like go off average. Right.
You would have to chart every permutation.
Yeah, okay. Permutation.
And so every, like, if you had like 20 variables, I'd have to make charts for 1 versus 2, 1 versus 3, 1 versus 4, 1 versus 5, and I'd have like 20 charts across there, and then the next lot. Or 19.
But you don't need to do that.
No, and then you would have to calculate the distance between points. There's like formulas for this, right?
Shit.
So you calculate the distance between points, and then you have like loss metrics, which is like, how can I decrease the distance between points, right? Do I move this and put this in this cluster? It's a really complicated process, like in the back end.
Okay, so you wouldn't consider it clusters if it's further apart? Like if the data sets were further apart?
Yeah. And
it would just be more scattered. Is that...
Yeah, there's different ways you can do this. I'm trying really hard to avoid getting too technical here because there's different clustering models, but the idea behind
technical.
it... Okay.
Let's go.
So there's different ones you can do it. So one is like you have a point and you say, this is where my cluster starts, and you just randomly whack it in somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then you go, and this is the most basic clustering model. This is k-means clustering. And you go, what are the distances between these points? What are the distances between these points? And the closest ones get mapped. And then it goes, okay, now we're going to take the average of all of those and move our clusters into the average. And then it remaps it. And some of the data points get separated. Mm-hmm. And so it goes, what's the average? And then it moves it again iteratively. And eventually when it stops being able to do better versions of it, it just goes, yeah, we're done.
So it's almost like, what do they call that? Bubble? Is it bubble script?
I don't know what bubble script is. It's like
the Google algorithm, right? So how they move things higher and higher based on what you've searched. Have you seen I can't remember what algorithm that's called.
You're like a... Yeah, I don't know. Just think of it this way. Imagine you got 3 guys standing in a yard, and there's a bunch of marbles in the yard, and they start off standing wherever, and then they point around and they go, all of these marbles are closer to me. All the marbles that are closer to me than they are to you belong to me. And so I then stand, after we agree on whose marbles are whose, I then go stand in the middle of my marbles based on the average, and you stand in the middle of yours, and then we look at it again and say, okay, which marbles are closer to me, which marbles are closer to you? And it'll change a little bit, right? Because I've now moved. And so one of the ones that might have been closer to me might now be closer to you.
Okay,
because I had to move over there where the other marbles were.
Yeah.
And so then we go, okay, well, these are mine. So then I calculate the average position of all those marbles, and then I go stand in the middle. And then we keep doing that until eventually we can't move because we are already standing in the optimal positions for the marbles.
Okay, right.
And we're just doing that over, and that's 2-dimensional. So we're doing that over, however many dimensions.
So that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Right. So how does this work within AI? How is this the next level above basic?
So and what's really funny is that's really, and this is where the one thing I've learned about doing this is how little I know. It is an extremely humbling experience. I don't know if you know the Dunning-Kruger effect, where it's if you know very little, you think you know everything, and then you begin to learn stuff, and all you're learning is how little you know. Yeah, I'm down here right now. I'm in the pits of this.
I think we explained that on the last podcast, right?
Yeah,
it's
I think we did. Yeah,
in a never-ending infinity room, right? You turn on a light when you learn something, and then eventually you realize you've got so many lights on, it shines more light to the areas that you don't know anything about, and then you realize that shit goes on forever.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or you realize that you're standing in a room. You think you're walking down a corridor, and you think, "Oh, this corridor is easy. I know where I'm going." And then you enter a room of 50,000 corridors, and you're like, "Oh yeah, that checks out."
Yeah.
But
that's like people when they first read a quantum physics book. They're just like, "Oh yeah, no, I'll get through the first chapter," and they're like, "Fuck this."
Yeah, well, that's why. So, okay, here's an interesting thing. Let's make a pivot to psychology for a second, because there's a few things this feeds into AI that
we're going there anyway. That's
we always do.
And it was called PageRank, the algorithm, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We actually built in uni in first year. We built a PageRank algo.
Oh, there you go.
Don't ask me how it works. It was a year ago.
I'm not going to.
I don't remember.
I use Google. I don't want to know how it works.
Oh, mate. Yeah, so with...
They just add a little dash of Hillary Clinton in there. Page ranking is it'll show you what you want to see, right? Depending on your stuff. But Google is one of the highest fucking grossing companies ever seen. And you don't think they hide shit?
Oh, we know that, if you were... Okay, so there's the ability to serve information, and there's the ability to push information, and then there's also the ability to restrict information. Now there's the good, and then there's the bad of this. The good for this is...
Thanks, COVID.
The good for this is stopping the spread of disinformation is one.
Yeah.
When everybody's voice can be heard, sometimes maybe some people's shouldn't be for the greater good, right?
Yeah, but I don't like how it can be you can choose what disinformation is.
Yeah.
Where it kind of seems squirrely, but continue, sorry.
So where this, translates to, I'm a big advocate of freedom of speech, right? I personally believe that people should be able to say whatever they want. Mm-hmm. However, I also believe that that the people who don't like that should be allowed to shun them for it. That's freedom of speech. If you want to say something, you also have to accept that you're going to be criticized for it, right?
I agree.
So where the good side of this exists, it's when you get into stuff like COVID, you get into the medical side of things, you have people spread disinformation. And if they're good at marketing, their voice may be heard more than someone who's a respected medical professional, right? And that's because, I'm sorry, but we as human beings are stupid. We as human beings are not efficient machines of understanding facts.
Yeah.
Right? We're filled with all these biases and all these heuristics where we take these mental shortcuts and we're just we arrive at whatever we think is the answer.
Yeah, because we use iPhones. We didn't build them.
Yeah. Well, some people did, but most.
Yeah, and they're way smarter than you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're happy to use what we have, but as soon as something gets brought up that's way beyond our intelligent capacity, we're just no, fuck that shit.
So, but coming back to it, it's okay, so that we can agree that there is a certain point where we should go, maybe this voice shouldn't be heard that strongly, right? When it's having an extremely detrimental impact on a society, right?
Donald Trump.
Whether or not you love or hate the guy, I thought he was funny.
Oh, he's hilarious. He's a fucking comic, man.
Yeah, that's why I thought Boris Johnson was hilarious as well.
Oh, that dude.
Protoplasmic invertebrate gel.
They're the same person, just in different countries. Literally just gets his hair and just messes it up.
Yeah. But so there's certain. But so okay, so this is an interesting thing, right? So you say Donald Trump, but then other people would say no, Biden. We should silence Biden, or we should silence Clinton, and other people say we should silence Trump. And it's like, how do you determine? Because now we've agreed that there needs to be some form of control, right? Or we can just kind of let Darwinism set in and people kill themselves. But the question is, okay, if we have to have some form of control, how do we determine, what is the litmus test for what should and shouldn't be available? What should and shouldn't be exposed? How do we determine that? Like, that's such a big ethical question.
This is the problem that we get when we let companies get this big, right? There's a lot of people were calling, I think back in 2018, 2017, around that time, for Facebook or Twitter, I think it was Twitter actually, to get pulled down and put into certain sections. Like, let's have black Twitter over here, let's have Wild West Twitter over here, to break down the monopoly of what it was.
Yep.
Because they had that same notion. They had the availability to basically dismiss any kind of information that they didn't want, like their narrative to be pushed on. And that control, that's...
But it's this is the thing. Like,
it's damned in the wrong hands, let's be honest.
Yeah. Yes, in the wrong hands. But this is this thing. It's like there's certain things that should be restricted. Like, here's one that we can generally, as a society, all agree on. You should not promote child pornography. That is a terrible thing. That is a disgusting thing. It's a horrible thing. And like, it's just not a good, like, I
agree 100%.
That 100%, yeah, that needs to be shut down, right? But then we make a list of things that need to be shut down. And the people that are making these, and a lot of them is stuff that everyone will just agree on. And everyone will just go, yeah, that makes sense, that checks out. But then we start getting into the gray. And this is where we're imperfect creatures. We are subject to bias, right? We have our own opinions that are formed from our pre-existing. And this is actually the thing I was talking about with AI kind of feeds into psychology. Whatever our perspective is on something, and whatever our opinion is a very similar to how a machine learning model learns off training data, so do we. The neural networks actually in some way model the human brain, right, with neurons. But we learn very similar. We have an experience. We take the experience and the observations made during that experience. We have some form of a reward metric where we go, oh, this made me feel good, or this made me feel bad, or this had a positive effect or a negative effect. And then we use that to adjust our course of action next time an event comes around. How do we determine an event? Well, an event has multiple attributes, just like a record on a spreadsheet has multiple fields. And we look at those attributes when they come up. And some of them are things you feel or you hear or you see. And then we use that to stimulate our response. This is how the brain works, right? It's like people with... I want to be mindful here because I'm not a psychologist. So I'll be very careful what I say. So this is a hypothesis at this point. You look at someone like, for example, who has PTSD. PTSD is triggered by, in some cases, it can be triggered by noises, right? Now, what's taking place is not that they're in a war zone at the point in time where they're experiencing the PTSD. That is an attribute, which is the noise, is causing the mind to reflect on a prior experience that was learned. And it was a very extreme experience, so the punishment reward in the brain was quite aggressive, right? So it immediately detours back to the learning experience from here and then attempts to adjust what it's doing in the future.
Yeah, to not replicate.
Right, which is where you get these really intense physiological responses. And it's almost hardwired. Sometimes you can't control this stuff. But so when we look at how this works...
That's why you see a lot of domestic violence from people that come back from war, right?
I'm not familiar with that, but explain.
Like you have a traumatic response, well, a response to trauma in the past. Maybe you were in war, whatever the fuck it is. A lot of people, this happens while they're sleeping, right? They'll wake up from their... You can fucking Google this. There's hundreds of stories about this. They'll wake up in a blacked out state, so they'll be semi-awake, but they'll go into physical action.
Okay.
And they'll start beating whatever's around them.
Yep.
And then you hear stories of all these women that are getting beaten after people have come back from war. It's not that they are like, sure, in some cases, I'm not going to say this for everyone. Obviously, there's going to be some fuckheads around there that just like beating their missus or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's just like, oh, I didn't do something. Maybe one of your best friends died that was by your side at that time when you're in the trenches. You didn't do anything at that time. He got shot, he got killed, whatever it is. You feel that you're unarmed when you're in bed. You go through a dream of that same shit. You don't have a gun. You start swinging.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that shit, man. Yeah. There's a lot of that shit. Anyway, continue.
But like, that does not surprise me at all that happens, because that's how the mind works.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And so when we're coming back to how is this relevant to, there's two parts where this is interesting. One of what we're discussing and something else that's also very interesting that I've been thinking about recently. But the part that's relevant to what we're discussing now is it's like the decisions being made as to what falls under the gray area and what is and isn't acceptable or appropriate or should or shouldn't be censored is made by individuals within the companies that have bias. Right?
Yeah.
And so really, and this is where it's really, we're just at the point now where it's just so whatever the opinions of the employees are or the opinions of people in management positions is reflected in censorship. Right? So where this is interesting, and we'll pivot away from censorship for a second, and we're talking about bias, right? So I had this thought. Remember how last time we were talking about value.
Yes.
Now we're talking how do you derive value as an individual. So I recently, it's and one of the things I think I mentioned was that it's great to know these things, but to be able to internalize these things is something else altogether. Right?
Internalize the change in your values, right?
Yeah, well, not just changing your values. Like, okay, here's a great example. People care what other people think about them.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But we know we probably shouldn't.
Depends.
For the most part.
The majority?
Yes.
Correct.
Right. So, but with that said, to internalize that's something else altogether. We like to be able to say that if XYZ says something about me, I'm going to be quite stoic about it. It's not going to faze me. It's not going to bother me. And then you're in a situation where it happens and you're like, oh, that didn't feel good. Right?
Good example of that is just before we start the podcast, somebody commented on one of my things, look at his hairline. It's like, I'm not fazed by that, but if I was to internalize that, I'd be like, what the fuck, dude? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're not gonna respond to it because you're mature.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, I did.
Well, shit.
But all I said was you really had to dig deep for that fucking insult, didn't you, mate? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just fucking low level shit. Anyway,
there's a really great quote, and I don't know if it's from Epictetus or Epicurus, and I'm gonna butcher the hell out of this, but we're gonna go with it anyway.
Go for it.
And it's essentially like, or maybe it was Marcus Aurelius, but essentially it's somewhere along the lines of like when he. So this man would insult me. It's essentially like, yeah, he really had to dig deep for that. But it's like I'm grateful that he insulted me in this way, because if he truly knew who I was, he could have done a lot better or something like that. And it's this idea of like, he's unfazed by it because it's such a surface level thing. And it's like, if you really knew who I was as an individual, you would know that I'm human, and there are far greater things that you could have chosen to insult me with. So thank you.
Yeah. It sheds light on the fact of how like the less awareness you have of that person.
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
Yeah. And so this actually feeds in great to the thought I was having, and that is it's really hard to internalize this. And so I did an exercise the other day, and it was after listening to a Jordan Peterson book, and it was like, if you were to reflect on something that like sit in your bed. And at the time I was driving, so I was sitting in the car. And it's like, and reflect on something that if you could change about yourself, you would. And one of the things for me, I was like, okay, well, I'm aware that I'm not meant to, that it is not beneficial for me to allow the opinions of others to affect my emotional state. And even though, for the most part, it's not too bad, there are times when it will. So I was like, okay, so how can I change this? And I began to really dig deep into why. Why is it this way? Why is it that we allow these things to disturb us? And one of the things that I came across was that what is someone's opinion of you when you really break it down, right? Like how would you define someone's opinion of you? What is it? What is an opinion of you?
Am I defining what I think their opinion is, or what their actual opinion is.
If someone has an opinion of you, what is it they actually have?
They're a reflection of themselves.
Yeah, right. But what is it? It's not just a reflection. So what is that version of themselves? So when we
Is
say
it a negative or positive opinion?
it doesn't matter, it's the same thing. It works both ways.
Well, it's just a thought, right? And those things come and go like fucking anything.
So here was what I arrived at. And this was actually after thinking about this, I found it quite liberating. So I'm looking forward to further meditating on this. And it was very similar to how an AI makes a prediction based on previous training data. The human mind and our bias and the way that we think looks at our previous experiences and then uses a piece of information to attempt to make a prediction. If we have more information, we can make a better prediction. If we have less information, it's a bit shoddy, right? So realistically, an opinion of you is all of this. All it is what is the previous experiences that they have? What information are they working with that feeds into these experiences that they've then extrapolated in to this prediction of you, which is this opinion. And a lot of the times, the model that they've got is skewed, right? Because they are not working with a complete data set, right? They're working with...
You can adjust that mic, by the way.
Sorry.
Yeah.
They're not working with a complete data set. They're working with whatever anecdotal evidence and whatever experiences they've had in their life. So first of all, we don't even know how accurate their ability to, even if they had all the information.
To shed opinion on something.
Yeah, we don't even know how accurate that is, right?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it's like, well, in addition to having a busted ass model, they're working with extremely partial information too, right? Which kind of feeds back to that quote. Once again, I don't remember who said it, but it's like if they really knew who I was, they would have said a lot of other things. And it's like, realistically, why do we put so much stock in that? It's like, why do we put so much stock when someone uses partial information in a skewed model? Like in the world of data science, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
We would laugh. We would look at that and go, your model's busted. You trained it on bad data. You have nowhere near enough attributes to try and make this prediction.
Yeah.
You would throw it out. You wouldn't even think about it.
I understand where you're coming from, but the lineage of where algorithms have come from is so fucking different from where human beings have come from. You've got to kind of take into account that back down the line a little bit, we used to live in tribes, and the people that are around you, if you took their opinions like with whole heart, you needed to, because if you didn't, you were out of the tribe, and that meant starvation and death.
Yes.
Right?
100%, yes.
And that's ingrained in us now.
Yes.
So we kind of need to go through life with like, oh, I don't want to kind of be, but we don't live in that scenario anymore, which is kind of strange in like how how do you put this? How the less plastic our mind is, the less it's constantly a learning machine, right? As if we haven't learned that we're not tribal anymore. Sure, we're tribal in the sense of we have a family, but like, in all honesty, I know people that were kicked out of home at the age of 14, and they're doing fine. Like nothing happened to them. They're like, fuck, they slept on a fucking friend's couch for a couple of years. They got a job, they got a house, they got kids now. It's like, but we are still human. And to think that it wasn't that long ago we were tribal, let's say, 5,000 years ago, we're all in tribes. That's all we did, right? Some people believe that 2,000 years ago, or 10,000 years ago, the Earth started. It didn't. It was 13.8 billion years ago. And we've been here. I think they have records now of like, they found jewelry. Do you see this? The amulet? It was a bracelet with a hole drilled in it that marks back 50,000 years. They had fucking machinery that could drill a perfect hole.
That's interesting.
50,000 years ago. Yeah. It's kind of it's an interesting like find that they have, like, because it kind of shows like humanity can get to a place in society where we have built ourselves up to like having buildings, pyramids, all that kind of shit, right? And then it just gets wiped out.
Yep.
Whether it be, a supernova on the sun, an asteroid impact, anything that can really take us out, because there's a lot of shit floating around in space that we don't really know about. Have you seen the graph of the amount of asteroids that come in to Earth's atmosphere It's on the scale of 1.6 million every day.
Holy shit, that's a lot.
Sure, granted.
How many do we classify? Oh, is this asteroids entering into the Earth's atmosphere?
Yes.
Okay.
They're not always big.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
like obviously
And-
none of them are extinction level events, right?
Of course not. Of course not. And we would obviously have eyes on something like that
Yeah.
because there's so much.
Well, I read a thing, and it was like if NASA spotted an extinction level asteroid.
There'd be nothing we could do.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do. Pretty
Yeah,
much, it's like
yeah.
we could not develop a response.
It
Fast
would
enough.
take us 10,000 years.
Yeah, damn it, Bruce Willis and Armageddon, you lied to us.
Actually, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson said if we spotted something like that, it would take us 10 years or 25 years. It could have been 25 years. 25 years to build that. Before then, we would have impact. Which is like, oh, fuck, great. But let's try and do as much as we can while we're here. But to go back to the point is, I don't think... with the thought that you had in the reflection that you had on Marcus Aurelius's thought, right, is algorithms only know what the past is, where humans, they have an instinctual thing to say, hey, if I like this person that's in front of me, if I find value where we were going from before, from this person in front of me, I have a willingness now to say something nicer, not to criticize his hairline or fucking whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right. But the biovariability of human nature is fucking huge. And I continue anyway.
No, so I wholeheartedly agree with you, like completely and entirely. We are 21st century beings in bloody 0th century brains, right? In
Neanderthals with
Neanderthal.
iPhones.
Yeah,
iPhones,
right.
sorry.
That's perfect, actually. I really like that analogy. And so I think, though, with that said, I think it's important that we begin, because our brains don't serve us great in the modern world, right? Like a very good example of this is anxiety. When we have anxiety, there's a lot of things that cause it. One of the things that can really make anxiety worse is insecurity. And when you have insecurity, a lot of the time, anybody who's been caught in an anxious thought process where you're attempting to predict future outcomes, then you're attempting to think of ways to resolve the future outcomes, right? So you're like, your brain goes, oh, what's going to happen if this happens? And then it goes, oh, and if that happens, this will happen. If that happens, this will happen. So how do I fix that? But what if that doesn't happen and instead this happens instead? How do I fix that? And
Okay,
what
go,
if this
go.
happens? Right?
Yep.
And so that's fine when, when the things that you're avoiding is don't get eaten by the lion over there. I see lion, I run away, right?
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with, and like social interactions, tribally as well, we now have so many more social interactions than we ever did, right? The amount of people that you talk, if you have a tribe of like,
Unmanageable.
yeah, it's unmanageable, right? Yeah. So, but coming back to this thing, and this is why I think opinions matter less than they used to, right? Because you're bang on. Like if you were part of a tribe and, you pissed off the wrong person, your genes are weeded out of all of eternity.
Exactly.
That's it. That's So as a result, we have these genetic kind of physiological responses to things. But
That's an interesting thought.
Well, that's how the human brain works. Is 99% of what, if you can think about just about any behavior, I guarantee you there is a caveman explanation for it. Let's try that as an activity. Pick a behavior.
Okay. People not wanting to have kids because of their career coming first.
That's probably like the only one I can't think of one for. I like that. Nice. Okay, well, let's think about this. People may not want to have kids. Well, here's the interesting thing. Do they, though? Because I'm curious as to how many people that don't want to have kids hit 40 and all of a sudden that changes.
See, this is one thing that I've heard explained, and I really, really, really like how this is explained, and I'm pretty sure it was a guest of Rogan's.
Yep, let's hear it.
It could have been Rogan himself, actually. So imagine this was me a couple of days ago sitting in traffic, right? And there was a breakdown on Kwinana Freeway and it was backed up to like Berrigan Drive from the city. And that's where I was going. And I was like, fuck. You know what the last thing I was thinking?
What?
We need more people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why. I think when you're clustered into cities, right, you're around so many people, the drives, take New York City, for example. You've been, right? It's such a fast-paced city. everyone's worried about how much money they have got and how much money they are going to accumulate because they want to stay in that city and grow and develop, and they're around people that are, especially Wall Street, right? Wall Street is so lucrative and so, what's the word? It's
superficial?
Yeah, superficial,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
That everybody looks at what everybody else has, and they're like, I want that too.
Yeah, like status items.
Yeah, status items, and if you wear a certain, we watched Psycho the other night, and like they were all looking at each other's cards, and it's like,
I've seen that
that's
scene.
so fucking weird. But when you're around that kind of stuff, you're more worried about how much you've got rather than what you can leave behind, because you want it all now. You're not worried about what's going to happen after. That's why you're happy to like rob fucking like John and Jenny over here, 80-year-old couple. You're happy to take their superannuation because, you know, it's going to help your fucking bank account. You know what I'm trying to say?
Okay. So,
and
I think you're right.
Okay.
And this is probably also the most controversial thing you'll hear me say. I think
You're not Indian.
Dunga. 100% am, brother. Oh,
I know you are.
I got a
Best looking Indian dude out
next
there.
time you cover, no, I had Cardi today. Dad made some Cardi, and there's paradas as well. It's unreal. Yeah.
Last time.
Were you at my nan's when we had Cardi kebab? Did you come to my nan's?
Yes,
Yeah, you
yes,
did.
I did. Yeah.
Shout out
that was
to my
for
grandmother.
for your sister's birthday.
Yeah. But anyway, coming back to it. So, I can't remember what I was going to say now. I'm thinking about Cardi kebab. No. So it was, right, kids.
Kids, superficial.
Okay, here's what I think happens. And once again, I'm not a psychologist, but I think that...
You don't need to say that every time.
I like to disclaimer stuff, but okay, it's like this. It's if you're unhappy, as you are now, right? You have insecurity, and insecurity runs rampant. And one of the reasons insecurity runs rampant is social media, is because you see people that appear like they're happy, and then you all of a sudden assume that in order to get happy, I need to have X, Y, Z. Marketing shoves it down your throat. Capitalist society, materialism shoves it down your throat, right? So you become to live in this world. If I do not have this, I am not happy. And this gets ingrained in all of us. This is such a big problem. And then somebody comes along and says, hey, the reason why you're not happy is because of this. And in fact, if you don't have kids, you can have this and you will be happy, because look at these people, they don't have kids and they're happy. And you buy into that. And then you get a little bit older and all of a sudden you're still not happy. And this is why a lot of people say that, as they wish they'd said they didn't want to have kids. That's not what they went for. And then as they got older, they realized that they in fact did want kids. And in some cases it's too late. And it's because I think as you get older, the physiological response that your body gives off to have children gets stronger, right? Because you're fighting against evolution. When you say, I'm not going to have kids, ultimately we can argue that the goal of any living being and any living organism is to pass down information to the next generation via DNA or teachings. So I think you're fighting evolution here, and I think the reason why you're fighting evolution is because we are smart enough to be able to defer gratification to get an outcome that we want, but I think we're aiming at the wrong outcome. I think what we're aiming at is happiness and not purpose. I think what we're aiming at is, I think that I'm going to have a feeling of fulfillment by getting X, Y, Z, and that one of the best approaches to that is to go down this materialistic path and to forgo having children and to have all my time to myself.
Well, that's the Steve Jobs thing, right? Is when he first had his first child, he swore black and blue that wasn't his kid, Lisa Jobs. And at that time, he ended up naming a computer after her, or I think it was an operating system. But I think at that point in his life, going off of what you're saying is, oh yes, please, going off of what you were saying is, you know how like you can leave genetics, you can leave. But I think also one of these things that you can do these days, because we're having these thoughts and nothing came from nothing, right? But everything comes from the mind. These microphones that we're talking into right now, somebody thought of that, and that's why we have them. We kind of have that same thing with businesses. If you really think about it, businesses don't exist without a person who thought of that business, that mind, that construction of that business. you can build something, but does that give you the same feeling as having children when that does well, that succeeds? Because you know it's going to live on forever. The Coca-Cola brothers, right? Coca-Cola is going to be around forever. Why? Because these two men, I think it was two men. I don't fucking know, actually. I should probably research that.
Sorry, two people.
These brothers have birthed this company into existence. Now, I wonder if that gives them the same oxytocin response as giving birth to an actual human. Probably not, right? But it does give you a sense of like legacy.
So this is where I find this very hard to believe. And the reason why I find this very hard to believe is, how is it that we as a society unintentionally manage to suppress what is arguably one of the strongest physiological desires that we have, yet still have anxiety and all of the other ones that maybe don't serve us as well?
Are you talking about
the desire to
procreation?
have, procreation, the desire to have children. Like, how is it that we were able to proxy that? That's a literal. In theory, if you proxy that, then anybody who proxies it and doesn't have kids has their genetics weeded out. So we consider that it's some form of a mutation. Well, the mutation wouldn't survive because you're not having kids.
But it could also be that the people that you look up to never had kids. And if you're working in a company and the boss is somebody that doesn't have kids and you want to be the boss.
Right. So it's, So is it because you want to be the boss because you look at the boss and you think the boss is happy? And we're coming back to this whole status thing?
I think if you're going after what you're going after, you're putting fucking economic glory over happiness.
But I don't think it's physiological.
But that's
bad decision making. It's like taking drugs and booze and these things.
But people don't do that to be happy. They do that to not be sad.
Yeah. Well,
right?
Sadness is the absence of happiness, right?
Is it though? Because I know some people that are like sad and happy at the same time. You know, it kind of, you're the type of person that's like lost everything, but they're kind of like, kind of chipper still. You're like, what the fuck is going on with this guy? He's crazy.
Got nothing to lose.
Yeah, right? My thought is, where does it go from, like, if we're not, like, Elon Musk has come out and actually said that we're not having enough children.
Yeah, population collapse is the biggest threat to humanity at the moment.
It's like, but you're seeing, like, traffic in LA, Los Angeles, it's the worst it's ever been, right? When you're thinking about, like, the amount of people that we have, Ricky Gervais said on a special, he's like, we don't need more children. It's like, how do you know? You don't need more children right now. He said, imagine there's like a bunch of unborn fetuses in a glass cabinet. They're like, why didn't you have us? It's like, I understand where he's coming from because it's not suitable for him because he's found his happiness, if that's what that is, inside of his workspace.
Yep. So this is, the population thing is interesting when we look at, and this is where data science is a really interesting field and why I really like it. It's like, okay, we look at the amount of cars, right, in LA, for example, and we look at traffic in LA. We look at traffic is getting worse in LA, and it's like, okay, we can assume if we extrapolate that and say population problems getting worse, right? It's like, well, yeah, but you're removing all forms of granularity. You're taking a very complex problem and simplifying it. And this is completely my issue with the way we do things today in media and social media and general public opinion is, and this is going to sound really pretentious, but it's uneducated, right?
Of course.
You're not people extrapolate data and make an inference. Like, okay, let's take this cars example. I'm going to ask you this. Out of those people in the cars, right, let's just say that the amount of drivers is increasing by, I don't know, 2% a year. The question we need to be asking is, how many old people are still driving, and what proportion of those drivers are just old people? So what I'm getting at is this, right? Is, maybe I didn't explain this best, but it's like, if you have an aging population, you're still going to have new drivers coming onto the road. With advances in medicine as well, older people can see better and they can prolong the onset of degenerative diseases and they can continue to drive. However, is if you imagine it's like this, actually, I'll hold it up here. So this is bell curve, right? And so here's the bell curve, and then all of a sudden we had a bunch of baby boomers and it got skewed this way, and then that bell curve kind of slides along this way. So now we're skewed where we have less young people and more old people. So population collapse is what happens when we have all of these services that we need to be able to provide to keep the older generation alive, and we don't have enough people in the workforce to do it. We cannot sustain ourselves. We don't have enough money from the government to be able to support pensions. We don't have enough support services. We don't have enough of everything, right? Because the people, they're still alive, and we're still extending life expectancy. People are still living longer. Rest in peace. The Queen lived to 96, was it? Right? So...
Devoted cousin to her husband.
Devoted cousin to her husband. Dear Lord.
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Your old bag.
That's so fresh. No, but like that's what a population collapse is. It's we cannot sustain the amount of people that are alive. This ain't tribal times. They don't just die. We're not going to just start going out and killing off old people because we progressed as a society more than that. Right? So it's like, what do we do? Japan's got the same problem. Nobody's having kids. China had to repeal their one-child policy.
I know, I saw that.
Yeah.
That was 2015?
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Yeah.
So we have this problem where the population's going to collapse, but it's not just because there's an absence of people. It's because the demographics of the people are a problem. The demographics are unsustainable, right?
So with every generation from the boomers up until Gen Z, well, what was it? Like Gen X?
Don't even ask me. I got no idea.
What the fuck it
There's
is?
like 10 letters. And
The most recent generation. Yeah. It's gradually gotten bigger.
populations continued to go up, yeah, but
Yeah.
the problem has continued to get worse. Like, look at all the boomers. When the boomers were like 19, like 18 or 16, you were working back then, right? Like 16, 17, 18, 19, all the way up until 40, 50 something. Like, my old man's a boomer. He's still working,
Yeah.
right? And think about such an industrious time that we've had in the last 60 years, 40 years, right? How much we've been able to produce as a society. And what's going to happen is all of these people that have worked their entire lives now need to be supported. And now, now it's fine. Up until now, it's been great. What happens next, though? Right? Like, what happens now that these people are going to retire? And so up until now, it's just been that curve of people has just been slow. This big, you imagine this anomaly has been moving. And then with these people coming out and saying, I don't want to have kids until I'm later, and deferring it. And
Well, there's a lot of things, right? It's like decentralized entertainment now. It's like you have fucking thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of influencers, right? Before social media, you would not hear a little bo peep about these fucking people. But because we now have decentralized entertainment, anybody and their dog, shout out Marshall Rogan, by the way. I think he's at 1 million followers, and it's a dog.
oh, that's nice. That's cool. I like that.
It doesn't make sense, right? Well, it does because he's the dog of the...
To be fair, he'll give better insights than some of the influencers.
No shit. He's not just dancing on the fucking on the TikTok. But that's where it's kind of headed. Is like a lot of these positions are not being filled as well because all these people are just dancing on TikTok or are doing Twitch streaming and all this kind of stuff because that's their avenue. They saw it. They looked up to it when they were younger. They saw fucking Bill Maher. They saw that, probably worst example ever. David Letterman, all these kind of stuff. We even got that in Australia. We got David Letterman late night, like really late. I think it was on like 11 o'clock. But we looked up to that stuff, but we never saw it as like we could do that because, you know, you had to be in LA. You needed to be this person or that person, a comic, da-da-da-da. You needed gatekeepers to know who you were so you could get to having that position. When nowadays we're sitting in, I'm not going to say our location, but we're sitting inside one of my facilities and who am I? I'm just Jacob Rhodes. Like, and I had this idea in my head talking about like having ideas and hoping that they go on forever. This is only going to last as long as I last. And that's why I love
Well, not
it.
even as long as you continue to do this. You
Exactly.
might decide that another venture suits you.
Well, yeah, I really like doing this.
But so here's the thing, and this is where I begin to get passionate. Society is getting stupid. People are feeding off of misinformation, and everybody's going for small dopamine hits, feeding down tailored feeds where content is being tailored towards whatever the hell they already believe. We had this whole discussion last time. And the educated individuals in society who actually give a damn have a responsibility to step up, right? The whole reason why I am very seriously contemplating doing something very similar to what you're doing and having a podcast, even though it serves no benefit to my career path.
Oh, it will.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it would take it on a different trajectory, right? And it would be it's a massive investment of time, right? So it's very not in line with the direction that I'm moving at the moment, right? At least currently. But
what it also does is, and I didn't think it would do this, is it gives me opportunities to have conversations that I never thought I'd have.
Yeah.
Right, getting different perspectives like ingrained in my brain. So I'm like, oh shit, no, I shouldn't think like that, or whatever the fuck it is.
Which is great for you, right? And great for people that listen to the podcast. But a lot of people live in this echo chamber of their own belief systems. And that's why I think it is we have a responsibility as individuals and anybody with a platform to begin to have these very serious discussions and as much unbiased discussions as possible, rather than some of the crap that just comes out of today's social media. And if we can, and this is why I'm a massive advocate of Jordan Peterson. I
Love him.
Love him. The guy's brilliant. I'm going to go hear him speak in November.
Shout out JP.
Shout out JP. Because
not Morgan. Fuck you, JP Morgan.
Right. So yeah, like a lot of, and like other guys like Ryan Holiday, right? It's the author on Stoic philosophy.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it's like these.
You read Daily Stoic yet since I last talked to you?
Yeah, I've listened to the whole book.
How good is it?
Yeah, it's really.
I didn't think it was
really like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be like part, one for every single day. But I listened to the whole thing.
So this comes back to what we were talking about. Is I have a love-hate relationship with philosophical quotes. Here's my love and my hate. My hate is that I can, people will pull up a phone and they'll pull up a quote and they say, and it was Socrates who said blah, 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 blah. And it's a load of wank because they don't really know what it means.
But Socrates sounds cool.
But they just want to sound like there's this whole concept in philosophy, in Stoic philosophy, that it's like philosophy is not for the purpose of discussing. It's the purpose of actually doing it.
It's actionable.
Yeah, it's actionable, right? It's like, I think the actual quote is something along the lines of like, rather than talking about what is a good man, just go out and be it, right? So that's the hate side of philosophical quotes, because people just espouse them without understanding what they really mean.
Okay.
The love side I have for philosophical quotes is a quote is really just a header, right? It is a placeholder. It is a lesson in a very small sentence.
I like that.
And if you take the time to understand what that quote means, anytime you need to be reminded of the lesson, you only have to read the quote to refresh your memory on the lesson, right? So like one that we talked about was, we were talking about, I think, caring about the opinions of others and how that influences us. And whilst not directly the same, it kind of correlated, is there's a quote and it's like, realize that if someone succeeds in provoking you, that your mind is complicit in the provocation. What does that mean? That means that if somebody has angered you, remember that it's your fault you're getting angry. It's not their fault. They've just said whatever they've said. They've said their opinion based on their bias, right? They've done whatever. But you're only provoked, you're only harmed if you believe that you're harmed. You're only angered if you're choosing to be angry. And as soon as you accept that, you begin to take more control of your emotions. Now, you can espouse the quote. Every time someone goes, oh, I'm feeling so unhappy about this, you can go, well, John, realize that if you are provoked, your mind is complicit in the provocation. It said Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's like, shut up, It's
I used to do that shit.
right. Look, we've all done it. Like now I try, and when I try to help friends, like sometimes they're going through a tough time, I try to really be careful what I say. I don't like spitting out quotes, but I try to be like,
You just
look,
hit him
like,
with a couple.
No, I'm just like, look, maybe have you thought about looking at it this way?
Dude, do I have a book for you?
Oh God. I'm actually still reading the book that you gave me. I kind of started on it, but I haven't. I keep jumping between that and the
What did I give you?
book of body language.
Grand Design?
Yeah, Grand Design.
Hey, good book.
Yeah.
Shout out Wheelchair Man.
Great movie, by the way, the Stephen Hawking movie.
Right.
I'm trying to remember what it was called.
Was it called? I don't want to
Here comes a bad joke. I saw your face.
I can't do it.
I saw your face. No, it was a cooking show, wasn't it?
Yeah. Something about scrambled eggs.
Vegetables. It's going to get me cancelled. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
That's the thing. If you get cancelled before you started, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, there we go. They'll pull this up. If I decide to start teaching philosophy and trying to help people better their lives, somebody will pull it out and try to use it against me.
Yeah.
That's
He
fine.
called the smartest man in the world a vegetable.
No, I know. Where's the sensitivity? Okay, here's the other thing. Right? So my thing on humor. The Aries Spears actually said it best. Oh, wait, was it Aries Spears? It was a comedian. And he goes, people just need to leave funny alone. Let funny be funny.
Yeah.
Right? And it's this whole thing of realize like that if you're provoked, your mind is complicit in the provocation. Very much the same thing. If you're offended by something, realize that it's your decision to be offended. I.e., somebody can make a joke about being an Indian to me. I'm half Indian. And, we can go the whole, did you suffer racism as a child? Yes, I did. And somebody can make a joke about it to me, and I will laugh.
Yeah.
I'm not offended by it. Why? But you can make that same comment to somebody else. Heck, you can make that comment to somebody who is white and isn't even Indian, and they'll be offended by it.
Yeah.
And it's like, we've reached the point where it seems to me like people have a lack of ability to take individual responsibility for their own emotions. In that a lot of people have a response to emotions where it's like, I feel X, Y, Z because of what you've done. So rather than attempt to improve myself and better my emotional response, I will attempt to curtail your comments. Mm-hmm. Right? So like if somebody says something to me that is unbelievably offensive and rude, obviously I'll probably not associate with that person, but I also won't.
But we're friends.
We're friends, yeah. But like I will also try and reflect on that and go, okay, I felt this way after that. How can I not feel that way the next time somebody says that?
Yeah, but you're looking at it in like a very logical way. Like your brain works different to other people's. You know that, right?
Yeah, but I'm not. Yeah, but that's not because I'm an anomaly. That's just because I have made the active decision to be introspective.
Aware,
yeah, and that's the thing. Anybody can do this. Some people go, oh, your brain works differently. It's like, no. You can teach yourself these things. I used to be very much, when I was younger and you're a child, and like, remember when we were all bloody 12? We're all the same. He called me a bully, or he called me whatever, and and then you get into a fight or whatever.
But that's just like what you were saying is prior to that, everyone is just going through life with these dopamine hits and being restricted. And then you have Sam, who's running through life trying to be as aware as possible of your own, deleterious fucking needs and wants.
Yeah. But and so here's where I'm always in two minds.
Deleterious, is that the right word?
I do not know.
I don't fucking know.
Google it. And while you're looking that up, in the meanwhile, I'm of two minds, right? Mind one is that it's checking time as well. I have plenty of time. Mind one is that
causing harm or damage. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So my mind one is like, okay, I made the comment about having responsibility and saying, look, we need to take individual responsibility and we need to go and we need to try and be better and we need to be responsible as people with a platform and people that, think they can act in a way that's to the betterment of others to attempt to, as unbiased and as well-informed as possible, attempt to educate people, right? Unbiased and well-informed is the key component there because you can extrapolate that comment without that to just about any influencer in the world because they think they're doing the right thing. So you need to have some evidence behind what you say. Like if you're gonna start, and that's why this is why I preface things with I'm not a psychologist because I don't want somebody to listen to that and go, that guy's a psychologist, that guy knows what he's talking about. No, this is a hypothesis, right? This is why I have a lot of respect for Jordan Peterson, because he has the necessary qualifications and has written and has reviewed the necessary literature and materials. So his opinion is educated and well-informed, right? So there's that side. And then the other side of the coin, which I'm always tempted to go down, is just like, you know what? People are too far gone. You can tell people this. You can try and educate them. A very small subset will take control of it, and most people will just continue to live in this little cycle of dopamine hits and blame everybody else and blame the world for their own problems, right? And so it's like, I know it's almost defeatist, but sometimes you're just like, you know what? Is it really my responsibility to try and change the world? Like, how far do I extrapolate that? Or do I simply attempt to live as a good man? Do I simply attempt to pass those teachings on to my children and help my friends and the people around me in my community?
Oh, well, you've got to look at it like passing those values onto your children. What's that doing? Is that helping the people and the community? Is that what you're going for? Well, then why are you just leaving it to the children?
Because why is it my responsibility?
Well, that's the thing, right?
Why am I the person that needs to come in and fix somebody else's problem?
I'm not saying that.
No.
I understand where you're going, but my thought on this, fucking ash from the weed. My thought on this is, if you've got two different subcategories there of like, should I help everyone or should I help my kids? Mm-hmm. To go into, like, if you had a button right in front of you and you pressed it and it made everyone put down their phones and do what was right by their
values,
their own
system,
yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Purpose, yeah.
Can't really get the words. I think it's that modafinil.
Modafinil.
Hey, I'm telling you, if you use modafinil, don't do it. It's terrible.
I did tell you. I was like,
it was not a good idea.
I was like, don't do that. So modafinil is really great for focus, but it also stems creative thought.
Oh no, I'm pretty. Does it? Okay, but
that's anecdotal. But most study on modafinil is anecdotal.
Oh, okay, right. Anyway, so if you had a button, you could push that button, and it got everyone to work by their own values and like the core of who they actually are as a person. Would you press it?
Yeah.
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 So, in that thought of, if you're a good man,
yeah, okay,
right?
I know where this is
wouldn't
going,
you want to help everybody?
Yeah.
In turn, helping your children, because you're putting them in a world that's surrounded by more aware, more true people to who they are.
Yes, but as the great Rag and Bones man said, I'm only human after all. To what point do we, like, yes, you're right. Yes, idealistically, you're right. However, the reason why I answer yes in that situation, but I say maybe it's not worth it to actually go and do, is like, what's the sacrifice that I make?
Well, the sacrifice is probably it's going to take your whole life to do this. In turn, setting you back to those Wall Street people that are just chasing money. And you're not going to procreate. Your procreation is...
I want to have a family, man. That's for me.
Yeah.
I will. If you told me my choice is to change the world, or to have a family and live a good life and be able to live my own life by my philosophy and my values and instill those in my children, sorry, champ, but kids win. But that's just me, right? That's where I'm at. And I know that sounds selfish, and it is, but that's
good.
That's my...
You have one life.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's my values, and that's what I would not want to sacrifice my future to attempt to do something that, hey, here's a great example. Remember the story of the Chinese farmer? Mm-hmm. Who even knows if that works out well? Right? All that sacrifice.
What is well?
Right. Well, yeah, that's exactly it. So does it work out to the betterment of society? Who knows? So why don't I just take the low-hanging fruit? Why don't I live a life that is what I can do to the best of my ability and that I believe is going to lead to the best outcome for me and my family?
I guess the latter of that would be you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know if you were going to better everybody's lives, be a Steve Jobs, be a Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know if that is a good person to say like that is actually doing those things. But innovation has helped us many ways and they've done some good shit.
Yeah.
And that's taken their whole lives. Granted, they had families. They've seen the other side of that as well. But to really, if you were really going to go ahead and make everybody's press the fucking button. If you got them off their phones and really got them working in who they are, who knows how much effort and time that's going to take? Is it going to pervade you from having a family? Yeah.
Well, so this is why I really like.
It's a really weird thought.
Well, this is why I really like Ryan Holiday, because he's very balanced. Spends a lot of time with his kids, and he changes the world through his authoring and his speaking and what he does. But it's balanced, right? Like he hasn't sacrificed everything for it. He hasn't sacrificed his family. I'm not going to say like the guy hasn't made sacrifices. Like I think the man's brilliant, and by no ways am I suggesting that. What I'm saying is that he has chosen to have that balance, and he has chosen to have both. And is that at the detriment of being able to do what he needs? Because here's the other thing, actually. Having a family might help cause B. Cause A might help cause B, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's...
Is that why Elon Musk's dad started rooting his daughter?
Sorry, what?
Didn't you hear about that story?
No.
Yeah, he adopted a young girl when he was younger, and now they're together. That's a real thing. You want to see the story?
No, I'm good. I'll take your word for it. Ooh.
Yeah, sorry to fucking hit you with
That's
a ton of bricks. But that's the kind of shit that we're kind of like, is he trying to make another Elon Musk? Who fucking knows? A guy that can change the world considerably with his technology, his smarts. Does he think he has the right genes for it? Who fucking knows, right? It's like it's a weird time in history.
So that's a very weird thing. So whenever I hear something whenever I hear weird information like that and shocking information like that, the first thing I attempt to do is try to argue both sides of the story in my head.
Don't.
Well, so obviously we know it's fucked up, and I'm trying to think of like what the hell the counter argument for that would be, and I'm really struggling here. Mm-hmm. That's weird, man. I'm sorry, but that's... I'm trying not to be like, okay, so this is a big thing. I try not to just hear something and go, that's fucked up, that's right. Like I try to see if there's a counterpoint. I have nothing there. I'm blank. That's fucked.
It's fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Yeah, you fucked my head up. What were we talking about before? We were talking about Elon Musk's dad doing weird shit.
Whether or not, if you had the capability to change the world, would you do that or have a family?
I would rather half change the world and have a family. How about that?
Okay, fair enough.
Oh, so here's actually
Let's digress if you want to.
Here's a really here's a really interesting one. Here we go. In my original comment to that, I realized as soon as I said it, made a fallacy, and the fallacy is I'm going to probably screw up the words. It's a bias. It sounds like the black and white fallacy, and it's essentially like we have this belief system that something has to be, or you make a comment that something's extremity A or extremity B. It's like, why do we assume that? This is an example. Like we as people are stupid, and even I attempt to be as unbiased when I approach things as possible, and I fail miserably.
Is this like the Donald Trump, Joe Biden thing? Like you're taking the lesser of two extremes?
No, the black and white fallacy is more like if you're not for us, you're against us.
Oh, so like Antifa kind of shit.
Yeah, it's like if you're not black, you're white. If you're not white, you're black, right? It ignores gray, right? So like, political spectrum. We're talking about politics. Politics is very much like this at the moment. Mm-hmm. There's extremities, and there's these just massive political extremities, and like there's centrists. I don't know. Like I couldn't tell you what the population of centrists is, but the voice of the centrists is certainly not heard.
Why?
I suspect maybe they don't care as much.
No.
Or do you think they're... Why do you think...
They care, man. I think it's because it takes a lot of shit like to get on the news, right? You have to do something wild.
Yeah.
And wildly left and wildly right. What's wildly centrist? Like, man pulls down his pants. I don't want him on our team.
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying?
No,
like
having a podcast and having an unbiased conversation about human beings.
Yeah, but that's maybe.
Maybe. Are we the centrists?
I definitely am. I think I'm a little bit more liberal, but I'm not sure. what my thoughts on what we were just talking about is you have to have, if you want to be heard, you have to go over the things that prick people's ears up the most, right? And you have to hit the hot topics, like take abortion, for instance, where they've outlawed, like in Texas, right? It's 6 weeks you get to have an abortion, where girls don't even know they've missed a period at 5 weeks. And then they've got a week to go, oh shit. And then after that 6 weeks, it's illegal.
Okay. This is going to sound horrible. But whatever. Fuck it.
Is this Sam thought?
Yeah, Sam thought.
Sam, but different.
Yeah. So my thing is we're based in Australia, right? Why the fuck are we discussing American problems? Because here's why. We can say, oh, it's a horrible thing. No. Genocide, slavery, and racism, and I mean like real racism. I mean genocidal racism still exist in the world today.
In Australia?
Yeah, here as well. I wasn't aware that it existed here. I know in Africa it exists.
It's still here.
And the Middle East, yeah. Okay, so here we go.
In the slightest way. Right. I don't mean to be saying that there's like a fucking tyrannical government trying to kill all the Aboriginals.
Mate,
but that's still definitely happening here, for sure.
Yeah, but like I mean like as in outgoing like...
Oh, yeah.
Like
look
tribes.
at North Korea.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Slavery, you have tribes, you have like in the situations in the Middle East where you're pretty much killed based on religious beliefs if you're not careful. These are real problems. These are where people are dying, and it's not there's a bias against me because of the color of my skin. It's because of the color of my skin, I might catch a bullet when I walk out the door. And I don't mean like if I have an altercation with the police. I mean statistically, there is a very high probability of someone sees
shot.
me,
Yeah.
on sight, and nobody will bat an eye.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is where like America's become a very interesting space because they've become so insulated in their own little bubble of what's important. And that's fine. As the rest of the world, I don't understand why we care about it because I agree with the fact that what we concern ourselves with is relative to its proximity to us. I.e., if you broke your leg, I would care. If some kid in the middle...
How is your ankle, by the way?
Oh, yeah, it's better. It's getting better. But like if you broke... Right, so when I was like, my ankle was busted, you're like, how you doing? You okay? Yeah. Like that, because you care. Some kid in the Middle East breaks his ankle.
Nobody gives a fuck.
Right, you're just going to be like, okay, well, why are you telling me this? Literally, you would be like, why are you telling me this?
Yeah.
Right? So we care about things relative to our proximity. And so it's an interesting phenomenon where we begin to care about all these American issues because it's like here's the thing. Why the fuck are we discussing, well, not even us, why are people discussing abortion? Why do people give a shit about Roe v. Wade? Did we forget that Ukraine's still being fucking invaded?
I don't think it's that. I think that all the policies that get pushed in America come here.
Yeah, I think it's media. I think
that's exactly what it is. Yes,
it's not even that the policies come here; it's that we are so influenced by
American media,
American social media,
Twitter and Facebook and all that are American companies, and we see directly their news, sometimes even before our own news.
But isn't that? And you know why? And then when it transfers here because of media and social media, that's how it enters into our political system. It's not because there's some form of it's not like they go to the fucking G8 summit, and at the G8 summit, our prime minister and the president of the US talk about abortion laws, right? Normally they're discussing climate change or whatever other international issues, but it's so it's not that. It's that it gets passed through the populace, through the media. The populace then have a response to it, and then things get enacted here, right? And so this is where we come back to this same problem of, at the moment, everything's controlled by media and social media on a global scale. And there's no, it's turned into such a big beat. Like, it's huge. Like, people joke, we joke around and say, oh, TikTok dances and her. Bro, this is a big thing.
Yeah.
This is, there's a reason this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. The impact that it has is insane. Like, let's take a look at a very divisive figure recently in social media, which is Andrew Tate. Look at the reach that guy had because of social media. Right?
One of the biggest names on TikTok, and he didn't even post one thing.
Shit. Okay. See, I didn't know that. That's really interesting. But there we go. Right. Like spread of, and it's like, as to whether or not you agree with him,
I
whether or
do.
not you like him.
I do.
Okay.
Not the misogynistic shit.
Yeah, I don't like him, but for me, I don't care how I feel about somebody. If you say something, my focus isn't on who you are; it's about what you said.
Yeah, look, if I'm trying to get financial information from Donald Trump, I'm not going to listen to how he talks about women.
Yeah,
Let's be honest.
yeah, exactly. Right. So, like with Andrew Tate, here's a great one. I don't like. I think he's arrogant, and I don't like that. And I think he's has a very heavy focus on materialism, and I don't think that will ultimately culminate in his lasting happiness. But that's to his own detriment. But short of that, I don't like. There's not a lot of stuff that he says. Like,
But we're not all wired the same.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the other thing as well.
It could make him happy. He could be the happiest person in the world.
Look, dude, if it works out for him,
Yeah.
sure. But like, so like, but he said some stuff that it's like, okay, well, a lot of the stuff he says, I go, that sounds bad, but I'm like, all right, let me think about this. What's the point? What's the counterpoint, right? So the point is like how quickly he spread, though, right? That's what we're talking about. Is how quickly he spread like absolutely wildfire over the internet, right? And think about how many like individuals like this come up, right? And all of a sudden we have like there is not a country in the world I can think that at least you would not have a few people that know who that man's name is. And it's like, and when you think about it, like ultimately though, who is he? Like what like okay, what is the value he adds? Like it's like,
Well, he's a Muay Thai champion.
yes, so he's a fighter.
Yes.
Great.
The value that, well, there's a couple of things that he says where he's talking to fat slobs and he encourages them to get off their ass and chase what they're going after. And I agree with that shit, but...
So other than being provocative, right, I think his voice represented a group of individuals in Western society that felt disenfranchised, which was men, right? Obviously, there's been the whole war on masculinity over the last 10 years or whatever it is.
What even is that?
Yeah.
Is there a war on femininity? Like...
But yeah, but like it's.
But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right? But where we're at right now, like you take 400 years ago, right? When we're like the king and queen were actually living in, I don't know if Buckingham Palace existed then, but let's say castles, right? The Queen of England dies. You wouldn't find out about it for weeks.
Yeah, probably not. Some
Right,
guys would rock up. Hear ye.
Yeah, like
Queen
if
was
you're
dead.
like a pig farmer on the outskirts of England, you're not going to hear about that for maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, the Queen's dead. Oh, holy fucking shit, when did that happen? 6 months ago. Oh, okay. And you didn't bat an eyelid at it. But right now, she died. The next tweet that comes up on Twitter.
But we knew when she was going into hospital.
Sorry about that. I dropped out, technical difficulties, but we're back. What I was going to say is we're kind of in this scenario where we've been set up by the world. Like right now, like take iPhones for instance, right? This little device right here is every bit of information that you'll ever fucking need, right? Any question you have, you type it into Google, it comes up with an answer. A biased answer at this point, use DuckDuckGo.
Use your Koja.
What's a kosher?
For every search you do, they plant a tree.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, they're gangster, man.
That's cool.
Yeah, I love that.
Do you get like numbers for the trees that you...
I don't know. I use Google because I get better quality search.
Fuck a kosher.
Yeah, sorry guys. Like I get their mission, but half my job's Google searching stuff, so I kind of need
Fair.
good performance.
Well, take Google for example as well. All of these companies come from one place. America, right? Mm-hmm. As far as political spectrum goes, why I brought up the abortion thing is because half the population are women, right? And eventually the culture that's being built within America right now, it's going to spill out.
Already has been.
But further, it will spill out political. It'll spill out in the way of red and blue factions. Like, what massive changes happened when it went from Liberal to Labor within Australia?
Nothing happens.
Right?
Well, surface level cultural.
Yeah.
Nothing happens. I don't like. Obviously, I don't follow Australian politics that closely.
There's less road work.
Yeah, I don't know
Who
what
knows?
actual like policies are being implemented. But
Yeah, but the changes aren't...
people don't care.
Because we've got the same land mass as the contiguous United States of America, but with the same population as Los Angeles. 32 million or something. Right?
We're more spread out.
Yeah, but we don't have that red and blue faction. Like, so when we get fucking hit with some news from the United States on how dividing an argument can be, whether you go Trump, Biden, fucking whatever it is, abortion rights, non-abortion rights, all that kind of stuff, that's so much more enticing, right? Than just like, what is the Prime Minister's name? Our Prime Minister right now. What's his name?
Albanese.
What's his first name?
Anthony.
Anthony Albanese.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's Anthony Albanese.
Okay, well, I fucking didn't know that.
No, it's fine. I had to search in the recesses of my brain. Hell, I could even be wrong. I'm not even solid on it.
I'm going to Google it.
Yeah.
But I know who the fucking...
Joe Biden.
No, I know who
what's that
the
thing?
president of the United States of America.
Hey, baby, take me out to dinner.
Bing bong.
Ding dong. I saw that for the first time actually the other day.
Right? How funny is that?
Yeah, I mean,
But you don't get those places in America where you have that bing bong dude. You don't get that without having a crazy government like that, right? Because you don't get it without like pushing people down in Chicago. That's Chicago, right?
walk down Northbridge on a Friday night.
What about it?
But you get some crazy ass drunk people saying some crazy ass things.
Those people aren't drunk. On that video, they're not drunk. That's
fair.
just how they are. That guy's got a construction hat on. He's at work, right?
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah. You go anywhere where there's a
crazy.
drinking district of clubbing and all that kind of stuff, you're bound to see crazy people.
Yeah, okay. I see what you're saying. As an aggregate. Well, like from the data scientist in me is like, yeah, but that's a very specific example. And like, there's things called publication
logic
bias.
this shit
So, like,
out.
I'm just like, oh, that's such an extrapolation.
But that's where we are. We're at that point now where somebody's saying, bing bong, Joe Biden, take me out to dinner. Right? Joe Byron or whatever he calls him.
So I was just thinking about red and blue when you said it on America. So I looked up the Pepsi thing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We have to talk about this. This is the craziest shit I heard all week.
So for those that aren't, did you want to or would you like me to?
No, go for it.
Okay. So during I want to say the 60s, I think it was in 69, Pepsi Cola, so Pepsi, the cola company, had the 6th largest military in the world. So how did they get this? They were selling, maybe it was the 40s. Anyway, they were selling Pepsi to the Soviets, and the Soviets loved Pepsi. Now, the Soviets paid for the Pepsi originally, because they didn't have money, in vodka. But as the contract for Pepsi ran out, they needed a way to pay. So they traded Pepsi. Now, I'm going to get the numbers slightly off, but I think it was 11 submarines.
Do you say the 40s?
It was either like 49 or 69. No, what was it? When was it?
89.
89. Oh, shit. Okay, so this is recent. Damn. When did the Berlin Wall fall?
Berlin Wall?
Maybe that's why I have my dates messed up. Maybe I'm not a great history guy. And the Soviet Union, because it was the Soviets. This wasn't Russia. This was Soviets.
Okay. Same year.
Ah, there we go. Wow, how funny that. So the Soviet Union traded with Pepsi, 11 submarines. I think you might want to look this up. 11 submarines, a frigate, a destroyer, and a battleship or something. I don't think it was a battleship, but essentially a naval arsenal. Now, granted, this naval arsenal was not in the best of repair. So what happened is Pepsi agreed to the trade, and for a brief moment, they had the 6th most powerful military in the world. Now, the US government actually didn't like this. They didn't like the idea of a private company having a military force rivaling most nations. And so they voiced their concerns to the company. And the company's response actually was quite funny. And the response was something along the lines of, "You're not really one to talk. We're dismantling the Soviet Union faster than you are." Yeah. That was a quote by the CEO of Pepsi. It was like the Soviet arsenal.
What?
Yeah, hilarious, right? Throwing some shade on the U.S. government. So they then sold it to a Swedish scrap metal mob to recuperate costs. But yeah, you've got it up.
Yeah, they acquired 17 submarines,
17.
a cruiser, a frigate.
Frigate.
What's that?
That's a ship of some description.
And a destroyer.
Yeah.
Right, that's fucking.
So if anyone wants to say Coke is better than Pepsi, man, you can say all you want. On my ass, don't want to get torpedoed next time I go on a boat. So,
is the same person, the same CEO of Pepsi,
no idea,
still in charge?
I have no idea. Let's look, because I think it's in my search history when this happened. The Pepsi CEO at the time was Donald Kendall.
Donald Kendall.
Yeah, and the quote, Donald Kendall, and the quote was, "I'm dismantling the Soviet Union faster than you are." PepsiCo CEO.
And I wonder who was the president at that time?
Not sure, but that is that's pretty funny.
Ronald Reagan.
Reagan. So yeah, that is the most badass. I'm sorry, but I don't care what company you are to be a private entity that has the 6th largest standing military power in the world. Now, obviously, I wouldn't say it was a fully functional Navy. There's a whole lot of other stuff that goes into it, right?
Yeah, but it's not about that. It's about what they took off them.
Yeah, it's about what they had.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which I'm sorry, that's pretty badass.
But what kind of fucking country was it? Putin that was around then?
I have no idea. No, this is Soviet Union. Was Putin around during this? You know what? Hang on. Look, to be fair, there's who is in power in the Soviet Union and who is in power in the Soviet Union, if you know what I mean.
Go on that thought.
Well, just because somebody's a head of state doesn't mean they're the ones in power.
Yeah, true. Yeah, there's
I'm pretty sure there was a period in time where Putin stood down as president in Russia for a little bit.
Gorbachev.
But man, how's that form, right?
What was the size of their military, right? That they gave 17 submarines to a cola company as payment because they like the fizzy bubbles.
The fizzy bubbly, man.
The fizzy bubbly. But what did they have to give up? What,
okay, look, we'll put it
how
this way.
how many submarines do you have to be we need Pepsi Cola more than submarines to go? Here's 17 submarines.
Okay, well let me put it this way, right? Let's say let's say you like drinking wine and you got 20 cars out in your front yard and half of them barely fucking run, but they just sit there, right? That's space. And in the case of submarines, they don't just sit there. You have to do maintenance on them, right? So it costs money to do maintenance on them because they sit there. And so you got all these costs associated just with having them on the books. So they're a pain in the ass, really, right? Especially if you're probably not using them and you're slowly running out of money to pay for your wine, right?
But aren't they were on the precipice of war at that time.
Were they before the Soviet
1989?
Union collapsed?
1989?
I don't know. I don't know what stage of the downfall they were at.
Yeah, me neither. I've got to stop acting like I know.
I have no idea. I
Google everything, let's be honest.
Oh, mate, I Google everything all the time. Well, that's how you should use the internet.
Yeah.
World's largest database at your fingertips. If you don't know something, go look it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's very interesting to see the reach of media now and where we're at and how
Where's it all going, do you think? Predict, let's say 20 years from now, where are we?
not good.
How?
I do not think. Okay, put it this way.
In what sense?
People are polarized by the media. The reason that they're polarized is because it's more profitable to polarize them. I.e., if you're right wing, you're going to watch right wing videos. If you're left wing, you're going to watch left wing videos, and the algo is going to feed you that up. Right? If we're talking about YouTube, for example, right, or Instagram, or any of them, really. And so that content's always going to be tailored towards you. It's going to be an echo chamber of your beliefs because nobody clicks on shit they disagree with. And so ultimately, as long as Facebook, Instagram, and these other social media, well, they're all Meta now, but as long as these social media companies continue to be financially rewarded for doing this, right? Financially rewarded for using an algorithm that prolongs people's consumption, then we will continue to consume, which means we continue to be influenced. We continue to have our bias impacted by. And Facebook, as far as Facebook is concerned, they have an obligation to their shareholders to maximize their profits, obviously without moral hazard, but how do you classify moral hazard? And that's why I like a lot of these senators, they'll go up against Facebook and they'll, make comments on how their algorithms work. And a lot of these things are just byproducts of these algorithms. So I don't think it's good. I do not think there is a force capable of stopping them. I think one of the only things that changes the direction of this is for something to become a bigger problem. A problem that we all universally agree on is a problem.
Like climate change?
Like war. Climate change just won't happen fast enough.
Do you think war is an agreed upon thing that shouldn't happen?
No. What I'm saying is I think if a war breaks out, the populace is going to care a hell of a lot less about everything that's domestic. You're not going to care about, abortion laws, for example, which I'm not saying they're not important, right? But I'm saying like all of these things that we're polarizing, right? Like all of these opinions where you have people extreme on the right and extreme on the left, they become a hell of a lot less important. And then what's going to dominate the media space is news on war. Because that's what happened. When war in Ukraine broke out, that was all you got on your feed. It didn't care if you were left, right, in the middle, or what. Right? That dominated your media feed. Because that's what people want to see and that's what they want to keep updated. And that drew their focus away from things that are affecting their belief system. Mm-hmm. Right?
To the point that they're instilling fear to get more compliance.
Yep. But it's like so. This is the thing. Like this is where I said it's a giant beast. This isn't a small thing. This isn't a social media. We can laugh it off. When you really think about this, when you really think about the impact of what social media and media is doing, it is completely shaping the way the human race functions in all societies. Sans North Korea, because they don't have it, but it is completely changing the way that we operate. It is changing the way that we think. If you go out to a bar and say something that might be politically decisive, you'll be able to spot 20 people that are willing to go have an argument with you about it, right? Mm. In a fucking bar in Australia about something that's related, like completely out. So it shapes what we think is important. Mm-hmm. And so I don't see that changing, and I just see it getting worse. And that's that kind of where I'm like, maybe I just fucking withdraw to my little hidey hole, get a cabin in the woods, have a wife, have kids, try to do the best I can by them and raise them well and let society implode upon itself.
I see what you're saying. Although I think that that's quite a nihilistic outlook, it does merit a lot of exactly what's happening in the world. Do I think that it's going to end in catastrophe? We have a way of sorting shit out. We always seem to bounce back, whether it be war, famine, even take the novelty of climate change. Right? There's always going to be pushback against it. There's always going to be the other brighter side. Now, if I was to get asked the same question as what I asked you, where I think we're going to be in 20 years, I think it's going to be very similar to where we are now. And that is confused. Mm. Because where our brains go, we're still kind of that, as we were saying before, we're Neanderthals with iPhones, right? We haven't changed in our neural chemistry and all that jazz. We haven't changed in our patterns and our tribalism. So to think that like some catastrophe is going to enforce the breakdown of culture, I just don't think it's going to happen. I think we're probably going to go deeper into it. There's something obviously to be said about artificial intelligence and the way that augmented reality and Neuralink and all that kind of crazy shit, right?
That'd be interesting.
It'd be interesting, but I don't think it's going to change the way brains are made.
No, we can't. It doesn't matter what you do. You cannot change millions of years of evolution in thousands of years. That doesn't work that way. But what we can try and change, and what we have to try and change, is how the tools that are manipulating these physiological responses are being used. We don't have a physiological response because of Instagram. Instagram's successful because of the physiological response that we have, which is the desire to release dopamine. That's why we get our hit, right? It's not that we are this because of Instagram. We're still the same, as you said, we're still the same monkey brain, Neanderthal, dumb caveman that we were millions of years ago.
Like if you pop me in the jungle, it would be 200,000 years before I work out how to have an iPhone.
Yes. More than that. But yes. Yeah. But it's like, so we still have these dumb brains. But people have worked out you can build tools and things that trick the dumb brain.
Yeah. Through collaboration. And I think what helps culture is having conversations like this, whether it just be me and you, or me and somebody else, or you and somebody else. But these conversations, they get people thinking. And all work with collaboration produces a result. All work produces a result regardless, but it has almost like a positive spin on it when you do it with somebody else, because you get a secondary perspective. You get to say somebody who questions your biases, who questions your neglected thoughts.
You have discussion. You get discussion. You get real discussion.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's missing from society. People don't talk. People argue. People don't listen. People just want to be right. You don't get this anymore. You don't get people listening with the intent to understand. You get people listening with the intent to turn somebody's words against them, to prove a point. Because if they can't prove that point, then they have to rethink what they know. And that's a tricky pill to swallow for some.
Correct.
But what can you do? All you can do is do what you try to do. You do things like this podcast. You do, you try to raise awareness.
For sure. That's all we can do, man.
Yeah.
And but for everything else that has been going on in this fucking crazy world of ours at the moment, we can only do what we can do, right? Just keep having these crazy thoughts, Sam. I love them. Keep being that introspective-minded person that you are.
Likewise.
And go down your philosophical road, wherever it takes you, whether that be living in the woods with your wife and your son, sheltering yourself from fucking illuminated tiny screens.
They give up on society.
Yeah. Or whether that be being the CEO of an amazing hedge fund.
Oh, who sees, man? We'll see where life takes me.
And that's it, bro. Just ride that wave.
Likewise, brother.
Thank you for being here, brother.
Thank you for having me as always.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been The Roadshow. Have a great day. Bye.
Take me home, I wanna know if you're down.